Good afternoon, and once again, welcome to VetNet. My name is Jason Dozier, Manager of Plans and Operations here at Hire Heroes USA. And I'm joined by veteran transition specialist Laura Talbot at our Dallas-Fort Worth Plano office. I knew it was in one of those locations. And then Matt Ferrara, who's office manager out in our San Diego office. And today we'll be talking about resume writing. And before we go into the class, I just want to remind all of you watching from home that we do these classes every week. In fact, next week we'll be talking about interviewing. Last week we talked about LinkedIn. We've talked about networking before. And so we cover a wide range of classes that cover all the bases with regards to your job search. So feel free to either follow us on YouTube, follow us on Google+, or even register for services with us here at HireHeroesUSA.org. And we will work with you either until you find a job or you no longer need our services. So we definitely ask you to, try to take as much of this in and be as, present and interactive with us as possible, because all these classes are geared towards helping you become more successful in your job search. So without further ado, Laura, Matt, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, I guess I'll start. Like Jason was saying, my name's Matt, and I've been a transition specialist here with Hire Heroes USA for over a year and a half now. Recently promoted into a management position, so I get an opportunity to train 3 other transition specialists on how to effectively help veterans transition out from their military backgrounds into rewarding new careers. Most of my background has to do with advocacy for veterans. I provided mentoring and advice to transitioning veterans in a lot of different types of situations and settings. I've also presented oral type advocacy in defending the rights and interests of vets in a couple other types of situations. And this position really follows along those lines, but in a little bit of a different capacity. So here I get to translate in words what a veteran brings to the table based on their military background and help empower them to sell that in the civilian job market. So in a way that is advocacy, but I'm teaching them about themselves and how to advocate on their own behalves and putting into words what it really is they bring to the table and helping them to understand their values. So it was really a logical path for me to end up in this position. During my time here, I've gotten a chance to develop around 200 resumes, and so I'm definitely excited to share some insight about how to really create that effective document and really help you to understand how to sell your background and what you bring to the table in the civilian job market. So with that being said, I will let Laura introduce herself, who will also be sharing a ton of insight as to resume writing today.
Yes. Hi, everyone. As Matt said, and Jason, I'm from the Plano office with Hire Heroes USA, and I've been working with Hire Heroes for about a year now, and I have past experience of helping service members who were at Fort Belvoir, the military hospital, and they were transitioning from the military due to various injuries. So when I was working there, I realized that there's really a great need, and not just providing the counseling and the health care, but also helping service members and really establishing a career in the civilian sector. So that's when I found out about Hire Heroes, and I've really enjoyed doing this work and what Matt said, really kind of helping translate what you did in the military onto a resume, preparing you for applying for positions.
Awesome. Okay, so with those introductions, we will move into the actual training portion of this VetNet class. So if we could move into the initial slide, which talks about the actual overview of resume writing. And what we're looking to do here is train you on how to, number 1, create a resume that describes your experience. Number 2, while highlighting your value. And most importantly, number 3, targeting your career objectives. So with that being said, there's a couple things that I'll share before we get into the specific details of the slides. First, the resume itself, the purpose is to get you an interview. It's to put you in the interview seat. And those 3 elements come into play when we're putting you into that interview. You've got to know your career objective so you understand what you bring to the table in the interview. You've got to accurately describe what you've done and highlight your backgrounds in an effective way to get you that interview. There can be a tendency to want to describe everything you've ever done in your life in the resume and think that related to a background investigation where you have to account for everything you've ever done. And that's not the case with a resume. It's a functional document to sell you quickly to somebody and then give you the platform to sell yourself in an interview. So I always share that as kind of a beginning introduction before we get deep into the training, because I think it's helpful in really understanding what we're trying to do with the resume. And the second thing I'll share is the importance of understanding the job that you're going for. It's one thing to just reflect your background and send the resume out. It's another thing to really do deep thinking about the position you want to go for and think about what it is that they're looking for, and then spend time to realize how it is that you meet the requirements that they're looking for and what this position really is about and how you meet that position. And then take the document and draw on the most relevant experiences as they apply to that position. And the more you're able to do that, the more effective your resume is going to be, and the better of a job you're going to do in selling yourself down the road, because you understand what they're looking for and your experience is framed in a way that makes you competitive rather than just a general explanation of what you did. So those are 2 pointers I always share that are kind of outside of the actual slides, but it's something to think about as we segue into the actual training. So with that introduction, we will move to the next slide, which are the 3 different types of resumes. And Jason, not to get off track, but I'm not sure if we're displaying the slides that we should be following along with. Laura, do you have the slides up on your screen?
Yes, I have the chronological, functional, and federal resume slide.
Okay. As long as they're up and the audience sees them, we're fine. So the 3 types of resumes. We've got first chronological, second functional, and third federal. The chronological resume, it's exactly like it sounds. When you get into the part of the resume that's describing your experience in detail, it's listed in order of most recent to around, we suggest, 10 years back of your professional experience, job title after job title, with the dates that you were in those positions, exactly like it sounded. Functional is going to be a different type of resume. And Laura, do you want to give us a little insight on what the functional resume is about and the purpose and how it's can be effective?
Of course, Matt. So a functional resume can be used for different types of people and depending upon what type of job you want to apply for. So we really stress using a functional resume for, let's say, spouses in the military who may have to transfer to when their spouse who's in the service goes to different areas, like different states, or deploys. They might have to take off work, and so then they have gaps in their employment. So if that's happened to you and that's your case, then we definitely emphasize having a functional resume, because that shows your work experience at the bottom of your resume, but at the top, it's really tailored to the skills that you have and align with the job description. So as Matt was saying earlier, both your chronological and your functional resume, they're going to be tailored to specific jobs and industries that you're searching for. But a functional resume just really shows the key strengths you have, and then you show your experience under each strength.
Awesome, thank you, Laura. And a couple other things I'll say on that. One is to, again, revisit what I was saying about the importance of what they're asking for in the job title. It also applies in the functional resume because there's particular skills that are going to be important in that position, and you'll want to highlight those skills. Each skill will represent its own section, and to decide which are the best skills to display will be driven by what's in the job description, what they're looking for. So again, it's important to know what the job is and target it. And second, another good reason to use a functional would be if you have a lot of repeating work experience. So many positions where you're doing the same thing over and over, instead of repeating again and again the same redundant experiences you had, you can showcase those skills, like Laura was saying, and really be effective based on the job description. So they're a little more rare. I tend not to make a whole lot of them, but if the correct situation presents itself, I will use a functional resume if I think it's the best strategy to get you the interview. Okay, and now the third type of resume, which is federal, is something that we're not going to be training on today. It's a very much different format than the basic chronological and functional civilian type resumes. It has a lot to do with narrative job descriptions about what you did It deals with government levels you held, salaries, locations, supervisors, etc. So a whole different set of information. They're built to be compatible with the USA Jobs website, which is the main platform for applying for federal type positions. But know they exist. Know you may need them if you're interested in federal employment, but we're not going to be training on federal resumes today. Is there anything else on types, Laura, that you want to add?
That's it. Well, just one example for functional resume for anyone that's thinking that that might be the best route to go. So I was working with a veteran that past experience was in aviation, but he wanted to pursue a career and to become a veterinary. So my veteran is going to be really focusing not on the aviation experience, so I would put that at the bottom, but then really focusing on the internship that he's done at the veterinary hospitals.
Awesome. Yeah, excellent point. She used, like Laura was saying, she used a little bit of a different position than he had past experience in and wanted to showcase the experiences as they related to this new career he was going towards. So she used an effective format to sell him in that new career, although his background was a little bit different than what he was going for. So great example of how functional can be effective for you. And we'll get further into the split you see with a chronological and functional. A lot of the formatting, the basic formatting is the same, but they'll split at a particular section, which is the real detailed experience. And we'll take a look at that as we get further through the slides. But so that's it for the types. That being said, we will move into having a look at the overview of the resume itself in the different sections. And what we'll do is we'll look to the, if you look at the right of the slide, it lists all the different sections that we train on. We'll get into each of these in detail. But as a preliminary matter, this is what the resumes that we recommend and create eventually end up looking like from an overview standpoint. There's a heading at the top. There's a summary of qualifications, which we'll discuss more. There's your areas of expertise, which are keywords and skills that you bring to the table. There's your experience section, education and training that's relevant, any certifications that are relevant, and then technical skills, which tend to get very specific, but if need be, we'll add technical skills. So with that overview, we'll first look at the initial top, which is the heading, summary of qualifications, and areas of expertise. So looking at the heading first, this is, straightforward. It's going to be your name, address, contact information, telephone number, email, and LinkedIn account if you have one. Definitely go capital. I capitalize the name so it stands out more. As far as the address goes, this is somewhat optional if you want to have your address. Some issues may come up where if you're trying to transition to a different part of the country, you may opt to leave your address off of it for the time being to prevent anybody from making early judgments about not wanting to look at you more as a candidate because you're far away from where the job location is. It's a subjective thing when somebody's looking at a resume, so you may want to play it safe and leave the address off, or if you intend to move sometime soon, you may want to leave the address off. A P.O. box is an option if you want to put the address there. Again, it's subjective, it depends on the situation, but know that you do have a little bit of leeway on whether or not you want to put a permanent address in there. Definitely have a telephone number, and a telephone number that's functional, and so when somebody looks down at it, they're not going to dig through databases to find your number. They're going to look at your resume and call that number, so make sure it's the right number. And obviously, ringtone, professional voicemail, which is a separate training, but make sure you have those as part of your telephone number. Email. What kind of email should we use, Laura?
A Gmail account.
Okay.
Or some professional type of an email. So one of the fun things about our job is that we get to see all the different emails that come to us. However, you always want to make sure that the email that you give on your resume and for someone to look at isn't going to be one where they're questioning whether you're professional or not. So we always recommend to have an email account that has your first or last name. And let's say if your name is John Smith, like this resume, you might want to add a couple numbers because the Gmail account, whoever you're trying to create an account with, they don't have just your first and last name. So we really want to emphasize the importance of keeping it professional. So if you have a crazy email address, or just, let's say we've had people that use their MOS, like 11bravo23@gmail.com. If that's the email that you always check, you can keep that for ones when you're going to message your friends. But we really just want to recommend that you create an account that's going to be for your searching for jobs that you're going to give out to future employers. And also, the reason why I keep saying Gmail is because Gmail is going to be used to be able to have Skype interviews. So let's say you're in Washington, like John Smith, but you want a job in Virginia. They might not initially want to fly you out to Virginia, so they're going to want to conduct a Skype interview. And then if you already have Gmail, that lets you do different things like Google Hangouts, which is what we're using right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. And yeah, Gmail really, like Laura said, industry standard. You want to have a Gmail account. If you're not going to go that route, though, definitely use something professional. First name, last name, not some type of unprofessional email or something that deals with hobbies you may have or anything like that. So definitely a professional email. Great point, Laura. And then the LinkedIn. LinkedIn is also a separate training we do. It's hugely important as part of your job search. A major thing for you to be able to use in the job market to help you in your search. We suggest posting your a connection to your LinkedIn or the URL address to your LinkedIn profile in your resume. Can you tell us how you get that URL, Laura, and put it into the resume?
Yeah, so whenever you log on to LinkedIn.com and you have your profile up, right underneath the section where it has like Laura Talbot, Veteran Transition Specialist at Hire Heroes USA, I can go to contact information and a link should pop up that says my LinkedIn account and my name. So you can just copy and paste that and then copy the link and then go to your resume and open up a hyperlink and just put that address in. However, if you do have a LinkedIn account, before putting it on your resume and hyperlinking it, I really recommend that your physical resume mirrors your online professional resume that you have on LinkedIn, that profile. Because if a hiring manager comes across your name, they'll probably do some research over the web to see what you have. And they might start to question your credibility if what you have on your resume doesn't align with what you're going to have on your LinkedIn account. So that's just one little side note that I always like to add in.
No, it's a great point. Great point. In like Laura was saying, the LinkedIn profile actually builds very similarly to the structure of our resume. So you can use the Hire Heroes resume format and build that into your LinkedIn profile. And you need to make sure it's very much closely aligned to support your credibility. So awesome points. That's about it for heading. So pretty straightforward. Just remember those few pointers in regard to heading on the resume. That being said, we'll move into the next section below the heading, which is the professional summary. And this, to me, really is probably the most important part of the resume. It's important for a couple of reasons. One is it's the first thing that a hiring person is going to look at when they look at the resume. It's like when you pick up a newspaper or a magazine article, you'll look at the top section first. What the test that they talk about in this section is a 30-second test, an elevator pitch. There's many different terms for this, but a hiring manager is going to spend a very short period of time in looking at the resume. And professional summary is built to make such an instant impact on a resume reader that they instantly want to continue reading the resume. When there's not a summary and the resume reader has got to browse through the entire document to figure out what you did, you're going to lose their attention very quickly, and it's going to get put to the side, most likely, of I'm not going to read this resume anymore because I don't know what's going on in it. The professional summary gives that 10 seconds of this is what your background is about as it applies in this particular for this particular position, showcases your most relevant and important experiences, and makes an instant impact. So it's very important for that purpose, for when a resume reader looks at it, but it's also important for you because it helps. It's a tool for you to help you understand what you bring to the table. And it's something that's constantly changing. So a lot of people will continue to develop an idea of what they want to be as a professional, where their head is as a professional. They'll acquire new experiences, new relevant training, and this professional summary is constantly adjusting based on these situations. And what it really is it's your pitch. It's like a commercial about yourself. So it's something that you can also use in a networking situation, or a conversation with somebody who can maybe help you in a professional capacity, or in an interview when they say, tell me about yourself. It's really a quick, concise, effective way to highlight your background. And us, and I'm sure Laura will agree with me, as transition specialists, this is probably the most important thing that we do for our candidates, is give them this writing to start to get them to see what it really is they're about and what they bring to the table. So it's a very important part of the resume. And if you look at it, there's a few sections in here that are bold. And do you want to share why we bold some of the professional summary, Laura, and which are the best parts to have bold on there?
Of course. So Matt gave a great explanation of just going on why we have the professional summary for you. However, we do want, even though it already is standing out from the rest of your resume, we bold some of the sections to really showcase the key qualifications that you have for the job. So John Smith, I'm presuming he's going to be going for an information technology project manager position, because that's what's bolded and that's how he defines himself to be. And the reason why it's bolded out is because if I'm looking through over 1,000 resumes, my eyes are going to get pretty tired. And I'm, like Matt said, you might only spend 10 to 30 seconds looking at a resume, so you really want to showcase the key words. So if I'm wanting to hire someone who's an information technology project manager, if John's already one, then I'm going to look more closely at his resume. However, with the top secret or any type of secret security clearance, if a candidate has that, and if I'm not actually looking for it, it still shows that this candidate is most likely going to pass background checks. Because if you go through all the interviewing for a position, and one of the last things might be going through a background check, and they fail that check, you've lost so much money in just trying to hire someone. So that it kind of gives them some relief that you're going to be a credible person. And then if you see the United States Marine Corps, that's bolded. And that just shows the military service. So a lot of companies now, and you can look online to see which ones, are really looking to hire military veterans and spouses. So that just shows them, hey, that you're a vet, that you served our country, and that you are going to have those leadership skills and that training expertise that many other civilian candidates might not have. And then at the end, I don't know if you've seen, if we've done really a brief overview of the resume, but in the second page is where we normally show your education. However, on your professional summary, you also want to show the hiring manager what education you have. So you just quickly bold, hey, you know, John Smith is going for an IT position, and he also has the qualified experience.
Exactly. Thank you, Laura. Super important points there. We really want these bolded sections to jump off the page. You know, because that's like wishful thinking that they're going to spend the 30 seconds to look at the summary. Maybe they won't. Maybe they're going to glance and see what jumps off the page instantly. And if somebody glanced at John Smith's professional summary here, a few of the key things that he's going to see. This is an IT project manager. That's the first thing that jumps off the page. So the assumption here is that John Smith is applying for a job as an information technology project manager, that exact title. So the hiring manager looks, okay, good. I have an IT project manager. This is what I'm looking for. Let me continue to look at this. From there, the eyes will scan quickly, line to line. Like Laura was saying, importantly, he's got a TSI SCI security clearance. Shows a background of reliability. He's trustworthy. The government has entrusted him by issuing him a security clearance. This is somebody you want on board, your staff. So that jumps out. United States Marine Corps jumps out there. Important, served his country, prestigious military background. And then Bronze Star Medal jumps off, a rare award for valor. And then, like Laura was saying, the education, which you may not see on the front page. So not too much. We're not embolding the whole section. We're selecting the most important parts that are going to really jump off the page. And this resume does a really effective job of doing that. And he'll be really effective for any IT project management position, because these specific experiences are something that not many bring to the table. Not many IT project managers are going to have been awarded a Bronze Star Medal. and already hold a security clearance. Now you've piqued the interest. This goes in the pile of I'm going to look further into this resume, and that's what you're trying to do with this preliminary stage of the resume review. So really effective way to make an instant impact and get yourself continued in the application process. So that's about it for the professional summary. The last thing I'll say is keep in mind, like we've been saying, that this is customizable for other positions you find. So maybe he goes off base a little bit. Instead of IT project management, he finds a general IT entry-level position. He's able to then just change the title to an IT professional, maybe adjust a few pieces in there, but leave the key bold information, and now he's tailored up for maybe a more of an entry-level position if he wants to go in that direction. So again, it's edited for the particular jobs. This one happens to be for IT project manager, but it could be effective for a lot of different jobs in that area. So keep that in mind as we move forward with looking at the rest of the resume. So that's professional summary. Next, we'll look into more closely the areas of expertise. And with this, it's the same theme. This is something that these are going to be driven by what they're asking for in the job description. There's websites you can even use. You can pull a job description and see what keywords are being displayed the most in the job section, and that's a good indicator of what types of specific areas of expertise that they're looking for somebody to bring to the table. In John Smith's resume, he's got strategic planning, leadership and training, operational reporting, project management, policy implementation. You see them all in there. Information assurance, records maintenance, etc. And these are all relevant to the original title that we talked about, information technology project manager. And Laura, do you want to explain more how, we're going to look more at the professional experience, but how do these relate later on when somebody looks at the professional experience section?
How do the areas of expertise relate later on?
Yeah, like about how you'll then support those later on when you actually show the experience.
So whenever you're writing your resume, as Matt was saying, you want to look at the job descriptions. So let's say if you say that you have records maintenance, that's great that you say that you have that, but can you please show me where that experience is? So that's when you're going to use your professional experience, the bullet points that you see down below on this slide, to really show how many records you maintain, how valuable were they, and what was the result. Did you lose them? Did you safeguard them? Did you file them? And then you can just really show the hiring manager what skills you have and how you've shown the experience throughout your years of working. And then that's the same with everything. So whatever areas of expertise you're going to have on your resume, you really want to make sure that you're going to put it in your professional experience bullet points in some way. You don't have to use the exact same terminology, but you really just don't want to put areas of expertise saying that you're an expert in something without having backup.
Awesome. Good. Great point. And yeah, exactly like Laura was saying, the job description will drive these particular keywords. Somebody will look at it and say, okay, John Smith has strategic planning experience. I want to now look further into his professional experience and see how he brings this to the table. And exactly like Laura was saying, the important thing will be for us to then support these claims of expertise that we're making in the beginning part of the resume later on in the professional experience. And now you've driven their attention towards looking further down at the professional experience section, and you've gotten a hiring manager to continue looking at the resume. So it's kind of a little preview or a way to kind of spike the interest of the resume reader. Another reason it's effective is in the event that it's a really big company and these are being put through a screening, like an electronic screening process, which can sometimes happen. They're just going to scan the resume, see if it meets a minimum number of keywords. If it doesn't meet the minimum number of keywords, it's never going to get looked at. If it does, then it will finally be looked at by a human. When you've pulled the keywords out of the job description, because they're going to have to give it to you. They have to tell you what they're looking for in the job description. So they're telling you right there what they want. All you have to do is pull it out and plug it in. If it goes through a scanner, it's going to meet the minimum requirement, and then a human then looks at the resume and the parts of the resume that like we've been saying, that keep them interested and keep them reading, then apply because a person's looking at it. But it can help you get through that initial electronic screening process as well. So similarly to the summary, really effective part of the resume, designed to keep somebody's interest and also get you through the preliminary processes where they're looking for keywords as they relate to the job title that you're going for. That being said, we will move into what Laura started telling us about, the professional experience section, which again is going to showcase those preliminary parts of the resume. And Laura, do you want to take the lead on the professional experience? Tell us a little bit about that section.
Yeah, of course, Matt. So with slide, we talked a little bit already about the differences between chronological and functional resumes. However, the next slide is going to go into a little bit more depth about the difference, because you'll get to see them right next to each other. So to your left, if you're viewing this online, that's going to be the chronological resume. This is the resume that we've been looking at throughout the entire class. You have the professional summary, the areas of expertise, and the professional experience, where what Matt was talking about earlier, it's going to start with your most present job and go back from there. We like to emphasize going back 10 years with detailed experience, and then having an additional work history section showing the rest of that work history. However, with the professional experience section, you're going to have the company that you worked at, but you're going to have detailed bullet points of what you did at each company. However, to the right, we're going to have the same type of a resume. You're going to have your heading, you're going to have the professional summary, kind of the elevator speech, and you're also going to have the areas of expertise. And all of this will be tailored the same way that we were just talking about. However, the main difference with a functional and a chronological resume is, as we mentioned earlier, with a functional resume, you're really going to be showcasing the skills that you have and emphasizing that, rather than having someone look at the bottom of your work history and when you worked. And as we mentioned earlier, you're going to use a functional resume which highlights the skills. If you see up there, we have the skills section, and this person is project management, and then they're going to have reasons and past experience written down in bullet points of how they've handled so many projects. However, just because you're not showcasing your exact work experience in reverse chronological order, you still want to use the same way of writing bullet points as you did with a chronological resume. So with a functional resume, you have the skills, but you also have the bullet points, and you want to quantify the information and pair it up in the same way as you will with the areas of expertise onto what you have. And then at the bottom, where you see the second arrow on the right at the bottom, that's going to be where you're going to showcase your work experience. And as Matt was talking about earlier, I'm the same way with him, that I don't really like to use functional resumes unless in certain circumstances, like you're trying out a completely different career, or you have large gaps and unemployment and you're worried about it, so that's why you might want to go into a functional resume.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Laura. So you see, like what I was saying in the beginning, is where we get the split between functional and chronological is under this section. But really, when we're going to drill down into the different experiences, and exactly like Laura said, you look to the right, and it's just going to be major skills are going to break down each of the sections, and then there'll be a few bullet points to show a specific example of how you bring this skill to the table. And that's how the sections will be driven. Focusing on the chronological resume, which we'll now do for a couple minutes, we'll move on to kind of a closer look at each of these sections. So with the chronological, rather than the skill set breaking down the section, you'll see it's broken down by company or job title. As far as the company goes, when you look at John Smith's resume, his first company is United States Marine Corps, and he's held 4 different positions in the United States Marine Corps. And if you look, we're not going to list United States Marine Corps again and again, United States Marine Corps, United States Marine Corps, United States Marine Corps with a title underneath it. We'll list United States Marine Corps one time in the dates that John Smith was in the Marine Corps, which was 1999 until present date. And then we'll break the sections down by the different titles that he held. And when you look at the title and then underneath it, we get back to what Laura was discussing, which is directly underneath that particular title is going to be a description in general of that role. So what any person who, in John Smith's resume, it looks like team leader, what any infantry team leader in the Marine Corps would be expected to do in general. And that's going to be a real quick and concise piece. Just somebody glances at it and says, okay, team leader, what was going on? They get the idea in about 1 to 2 sentences about what this role is about. We don't want to go too in depth in this part, because when you're going too in depth, now you're getting into specific achievements. And that's part is for the bullet points. Those are where you put in your specific achievements. So that's the description of the role. And then the bullet points or accomplishments, as it says on the slide, are going to be something that only you achieved in that role. Not any team leader had this particular accomplishment. So what we're looking to really draw on and showcase, and these accomplishments are numbers, because they hold weight and credibility when somebody looks at the resume. Getting back to the point that Laura made, when we have the keywords at the top and they say, okay, strategic planning, how do you bring strategic planning to my company? They look further down and they say, and it says you planned particular X mission, which involved 10 personnel and however many millions of dollars in government equipment and assets. That's strategic planning that holds credibility. You're not just saying, I've planned things. I promise I can plan. I can plan strategically. You're bringing hard numbers to the table that holds weight and credibility. And it makes an impact on the reader. And at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do, is make that impact, and it jumps out at you. There also can be built up into the summary section when you're using these numbers. So in John Smith's example, we see that he's got $75,000 in government equipment and assets he's been responsible for. He's led teams of up to 40 personnel. So now we're talking hard numbers. You know, okay, leadership and training. How does he bring that to the table? He led a team of 40 personnel during military operations. That's leadership. It's not just saying I know how to lead people. Again, so that's the idea in this chronological section. It also applies in the functional resume, as Laura said, but it's just a little bit different here because we're going to showcase particular job titles and talk about particular experiences in those job titles. So that's pretty much the idea with these various professional experience sections. It's getting real deep into exactly what you did, and it's supporting the claims that you're making about yourself at the beginning of the resume when you spiked that interest to the reader. So with that being said, we'll move into something a little more relevant for the military audience, which is how do you translate these military skills? And this is probably one of the biggest barriers, so to speak, or challenges that transitioning military personnel face is once we've got the structure down, we're wanting to put these skills in place, how do I put them into a language that makes an impact in the civilian world? So if you look at the military skills example that should be up, we have somebody with infantry experience. Infantry experience holds a ton of weight and credibility in the civilian world, and it means a lot to a civilian employer because of what you've been responsible for, your ability to rise to the occasion, to handle a high-pressure situation, safeguard life and equipment across global lines a lot of times. That's important stuff. That's stuff that not anybody brings to the table. But when you showcase it the way it is on this slide, successfully performed patrols in combat, which resulted in 50 enemy KIA and secure 15 HVTs, nobody knows what it means, and you've lost its value. At best, you've lost its value. At worst, you've scared the resume reader who's a civilian that doesn't have experience, nor have they met anybody who's been to combat, and now they're kind of, who knows where their mind's going. But at a minimum, they're not sure what you did. So us as VTSers know what this means, and we know how to translate it. It's a matter of teaching you how to translate it into those civilian terms and helping you to translate it and actually translating it. So with that being said, we'll see on the next slide a more translated version of what this person would have as a military accomplishment under the professional skills section. And Laura, do you want to take a look at that and kind of explain why it's more effective?
Yeah, of course. So in the next slide, what Matt was talking about with what we're seeing right now is the successfully performed patrols in combat, which resulted in 50 enemy KIAs and secured 15 HVTs. Well, we always like to emphasize this method called the STAR method. So that talks about the situation at hand, the task that you were assigned, the action that you took, and the result of what you did. So, Jason, do you mind switching the next slide? As you can see here, this is going to be the result of using the STAR method. So what were you assigned to do? The situation that you had operations, and you were tasked with leading and conducting over 100 combat patrols over a 12-month period in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And that's kind of more of the situation. Where were you doing these security operations? Because you did the work and you just did it automatically. When you're in the military especially, you're assigned to do something and you do it. And you're, like most of the people that we work with, they're very humble about it, and everything that you've done, that's just part of what you do in everyday life. However, in the civilian sector, I'm a civilian, and I was always taught, you really want to showcase everything that you did and take pride in what you did in the sense of being able to write it out and say your involvement. So I have more of this is what I did, and the military is focused on more the team aspect. However, whenever you're searching for positions, the fact that you have teamwork is wonderful, but you also want to show your individual participation in what you accomplished. So you took the action of conducting 100 combat patrols, and the result of what you did was that you captured 15 enemies. However, I don't know, it depends what type of a position that you're applying to. So if you wanted to do a human resources type job, or the way that you're going to phrase this is going to be different versus if you're applying to security law enforcement position. So I always like to think of your professional experience as the foundation of your resume, and you don't have to tailor it as much as you would tailor it for the first part of your resume. However, if you're going to be applying to a completely different industry, such as human resources versus law enforcement, how you're going to describe the situation, the task, and the action, the result of what you did, the wording might need to be changed a little bit. And that's what we're here for. So if this seems overwhelming at all, if you want to apply to Hire Heroes, and we'll talk about the registration process after, but just know that we'll assist you, because it took me a while to understand how to translate the military skills into civilian language. And it's just a process that, just the experience of writing resumes and tailoring them, you'll eventually get better at it.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. And a couple super important points where I really liked how you discussed the STAR method, and that is a great way to help you to expand upon the individual accomplishment, because it shows there was a task at hand and it shows a result that you created. And results in the civilian world often translate into either profitability or safeguarding the things involved with the company. So, but mainly profitability is a big one. So when you can show a result like that using that method that Laura discussed, it's a great way to really expand upon your accomplishment. And then the other important point I really liked was how you said the language is going to also, again, depend on what type of job it is and what they're looking for in the job description. I think in this particular example, this was more of a security-based or law enforcement type of job. So you see a little more kind of Operation Iraqi Freedom, combat patrols, capturing enemy combatants, those types of words, which is okay for that type of position because it sort of comes with the territory. For different types of jobs, like maybe a clerical or an office kind of job in a highly civilian area, you may want to go even further away from translating and kind of just frame it as a mission or let a team to achieve goals. Something like that, and completely stay off any combat type discussion. But again, it's going to really depend on the situation and what it is you're looking for. But great point by Laura on how to really expand upon your accomplishment and explain to somebody what it is and show a result, because again, it holds credibility when you look at the resume. So Quick point there on military skills translating. Like Laura said, this is what we do as transition specialists. So when you register for our services, there's somebody who's trained in this type of stuff to help you to explain what you did and translate it for you. Now, a couple other options are on the next slide. Some websites which also can help you translate the military skills. The big one that I'm familiar with is ONET online. With ONET, you're able to just type in your military occupation, and it will actually give you back civilian employment options and translate that experience for you and show you where it applies and how it applies. So it's very effective, and you can help build it into your resume. The other two websites looks like vaforvets.va.gov. So similar idea. You'll put in your military occupation and experiences you had. It will help you translate and show how it applied. And then same thing on military.com/veteranjobs. And you can also get linked into a lot of job searching techniques through these websites. It can point you in the right direction of where to start job searching, which is a little bit of a different class related to strategic planning. But just to borrow from that class, this is a great way to get you started on looking at where you're going with your civilian professional career. And to get back to the beginning of what I was saying, the more you're able to determine that and frame that in your mind, the more effective your resume becomes, and the more effective you become in the job market because you understand what you bring to the table and you understand how to sell it to a civilian employer. So these not only can help you translate your resume, but help you to understand where you're headed and how you can get there and how you can be effective in getting there. Do you use any other translator sites, Laura, or are these the three main ones for you?
I will also, yeah, I mean, I've tried ONET. That's probably the one that I'll use the most, but also just looking on Google. I know it's as easy, so type in a certain MOS, but then also, let's say you're a military spouse or you worked in the military for X amount of years, but you also had other jobs, and you want to know how to write those bullet points for each, let's say if you were a sales representative or if you were a clerk. Definitely you can try to look up your own job description for the position that you applied to, but also similar job descriptions, and you can copy and paste the bullet points and change around the words. However, it's really easy to just copy and paste from another job description, but it's not going to be the same thing with the STAR method that I mentioned earlier, because you're going to want to personalize it to your own work experience and add in the numbers, how efficient you were, how much you were responsible for, and what was accomplished. So just doing a simple Google search can be great and just looking at the job descriptions, but if you do that, just make sure that you're also going to add in your own unique work experience.
Awesome, great point. Thank you, Laura. So that's, as far as professional experience, that is about it. So some important points on there, some ideas to get you going on that section, and a description of what that section is about. That being said, we'll take a look at the final three, which, before I go into these sections, I will say these are highly able to be modified for different individuals. I often change these sections. I always include them if they're relevant, but I may add others if I find that something else is important as far as a person's background and where they're headed. I may change one of the sections if I think I can frame that section in a way that's more effective for the individual. But in general, these are just a few of ideas of what we look at on the bottom part. And it's really, I kind of classify this all as just your hard background information. So it's not the type of thing like in the professional experience where we're able to go ahead and adjust it or target it for jobs. It's really just a matter of what do you have for hard qualifications and certifications and education in your background that we can just place into the resume that applies where you're headed. So keep in mind, these are very modifiable. We often modify them, but we'll always get them in there depending on what you've done and what you've got for certifications. So looking first at education, of course, hugely important part of the resume. Any type of civilian education training that you're in the process of or that you've done in your past is going to definitely go under the education section, and we're definitely going to have an education section for it. Like Laura mentioned in the beginning, we'll also showcase that type of stuff up in the professional summary section because it's so important, and oftentimes it can be required for the position. If they're asking for a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, you'll definitely need it in the professional summary and under the education section. Looking at kind of the details of how the education is displayed, this is kind of, I think different people will do this in a different way. Personally, I put the school in bold and I put the degree right below it with the year completed on the degree. This one does it in more of a list form, but importantly, it starts with the higher education first. So this person has a Master of Arts in Telecommunications Management. As we remember, John Smith was going for an information technology project management position, so telecommunications management's directly on point for that type of a position. He's got a master's in it. It's super important. We're going to list it first under the education section along with the school, which is Webster University, the location, and the year he completed the degree. If it's not complete yet, do we put it on, Laura, if they haven't finished?
It depends. So let's say that 10 years ago you decided to get your bachelor's degree, but then you ended up deciding that you didn't want to finish it. So I always recommend not putting your bachelor's degree and how many credits you have or whatnot unless you're in current pursuit or it's completed. Because your resume is kind of free-for-all for a hiring manager, whoever's interviewing you, to ask you whatever questions. So you don't want to have to explain to them why you decided not to go to finish school. For whatever the reason may be, you just always want the questions to be geared toward why you're a good fit for them in a professional manner. So like Matt said, you really just want to do the ones that you completed or if you're in current pursuit. And with that, let's say you haven't gotten your Master's of Arts yet, but you'll finish it in June of 2016. So we would put expected June 2016. That way they know, hey, John Smith is actually currently pursuing his Master's of Arts, and it's great that he already has some of that college degree under his belt.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. Great point. Like Laura was saying, this section, again, can be modified. So just because you've done some education 10 years back that's not related to what you want to do, it's not a background. You're not required to showcase that in the resume. If they're asking for it as part of a background investigation, I would advise not to withhold information about your background and disclose that. But when it comes to the resume, it does not have to be in there. We're going to get things in the resume that makes you as an effective candidate as possible. And exactly like Laura was saying, if there's something 10 years old that you never finished that's not on point, we won't be putting that in there. But like John Smith here, his master's and his bachelor's are super important. We'll get that section in the resume, and if he's currently in process of it, we'll put it in there as pending. So super important on the education. One section that's not in here that I oftentimes add is military training. Most people have, if you're in the military for a decent amount of time, you end up doing leadership training academies, specialized or advanced type training courses, and these are super important. They can often be difficult to get through. You can learn massive amounts of information in a short period of time that they may not even teach in a civilian education area. So I oftentimes will prompt somebody to get that type of thing in. So if you've got leadership training and specialized skills training, particularly that are relevant to the job description, definitely add a military training section underneath education. So just an idea. Certifications, this part can be tricky because it's hard to say if particular certifications that you got in the military will apply in the civilian sector. A lot of it gets back to taking a look at what is required for this particular job in doing the work and the processing and the thinking to determine, do I have the certifications and requirements that they're asking for? And if so, I'm going to showcase them. Looking into and finding out if a military certification applies in the civilian sector. Those are all types of work that oftentimes the individual's got to do. The VTS isn't always sure about how the certifications apply and if they apply and if they're credible or things like that. So a lot of times we'll rely on the particular individual to find that type of information. But that being said, it's a very important section, particularly when a job is asking for particular certifications. In the John Smith example that we have, these are all IT certifications that are really important. CompTIA is big for IT. He's got ETA certified in fiber optics installer. So, this not only shows he's certified if the job's looking for that, but he's got exposure to working with fiber optic cables and installations in regard to IT systems. So, you know, that's big, and it may be big even if it's not a requirement. So in this particular example, it's in there. But you see the other ones, AutoCAD, CEH, V8. These are, again, IT-related qualifications and certifications that may or may not be required. And then finally, the award section. And this is big, and it's something for particularly the transitioning military community that they bring to the table that civilians don't bring. These are oftentimes big awards, sometimes awarded by an act of Congress. So somebody who's got a civilian education and they have a degree, they will never be able to showcase this type of award in a resume. And so somebody like John Smith, who obtained a Bronze Star medal, it's either an act of valor or exceptional performance in a combat zone. So something that very few people will ever experience. Only a special person can perform in that type of environment, and is a major piece of showcasing you as a military person. That being said, these can be highly personal and kind of individual awards that people may or may not want to display in a resume. So oftentimes with this, we'll leave this up to the individual candidate. I recommend to the fullest putting in individual achievements, particularly awards of valor or meritorious service and things like that. In this case, he's got a Bronze Star medal, combat action, Iraq campaign, so it shows service across global lines in support of operations in Iraq. He's got a Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, which is an individual award for something he did. Not just anybody can get that type of award. Laura, what's your approach on unit type awards?
Like I was saying earlier about being in the civilian sector for employment, you really just want to focus on your own individual achievement. However, if you do have those awards with your unit that might be shown on your DD-214 form, we just encourage you to just really focus on the Bronze Star Medal, the Combat Action Ribbon, the Iraqi Campaign Medal, because that's the one that you personally earned. And these awards are wonderful, so we don't want to kind of discredit your own personal awards for ones that might have unit attached to it.
Exactly. So yeah, it's again, and it comes down to discretion. If somebody doesn't have as many awards, I may put in the unit awards just to show, you know, participation and everybody's contributing to the mission, and this is something that organization or unit obtained and you were a part of it, so I'll put it in. If somebody's got huge stuff like John Smith does, we're going to avoid national defense and unit award, and we're going to really hit on his spectacular individual military achievements, Bronze Star, combat action, etc. Some people shy away from the combat action. I tend not to. I don't think you need to hide that type of thing. There's some stereotypes to worry about when it comes to somebody in combat, but I think the prestige of the award and the impact that it leaves on a reader outweighs any type of risk of being unfairly interpreted because of that award. But again, like the general themes, Ben, this is individualistic. It's up to you. It's what's going to be most effective for the position, and that's all we're worried about, is showcasing what makes you the most competitive candidate for a position. So that's what the theme is throughout this whole training. That being said, we'll get into the last few slides. We're running short on time. We're almost at an hour, but I'll go into a couple common mistakes that will automatically dismiss you as a candidate, as identified by employers. So actual employers have looked at this and said this. A couple things to keep in mind. Typos. That's a no-brainer. It shows you're careless, sloppy, didn't take the time to spell the word and use proper grammar. Don't do it. It's the leading cause of your resume being dismissed. 58% of employers say they won't look at their resume anymore. If it's not tailored for the job posting, I've said this throughout this whole training, so you guys are aware of my stance on tailoring resumes to the job posting, but 36% say if this isn't tailored for the job position, we're not going to look anymore. So I'm not the only one that feels you should tailor your resume. Not listing your skills or areas of expertise. This gets the example of they're not going to want to look at some type of narrative. There's got to be impact that happens instantly, and that's what your skills and areas of expertise do for you. When they're not there, 35% of employers say they're going to automatically dismiss you as a candidate. Sentences copied from job posting. Laura mentioned this during the training. You do not just copy and paste the job posting and put it in your resume and submit it. It's probably the worst decision you could possibly make. You borrow from it and tailor to it and show how you meet those job requirements, but we do not just put the sentences into the resume. Huge portion of employers will dismiss a resume for that. Inappropriate email addresses, we talked about that one. Definitely professional, Gmail's industry standard. We definitely want to go Gmail and use your first name and last name. Printed on decorative paper, so I guess this would be like real colorful type paper. We don't want to do that. That being said, I would suggest, if you can, a more expensive type of resume paper, like an ivory kind of paper, if you can do that. But definitely don't do decorative, so bright colors and neons, etc. And then a photo. We definitely don't want a photo. It's not professional. It's not something that the interviewer wants to see, except for very limited types of jobs. As a general rule, don't include a photo. So that's what we have for kind of the general ideas about mistakes that can get you automatically dismissed as a candidate. I'll move into the last slide. Some final do's and don'ts. Do target qualifications for the specific job. Translate your skills. Use your professional email. Quantify, for sure. We talked about this in the numbers and the impact and importance that they hold and the credibility that they have. And spell out your abbreviations. This is like an underrated problem with a lot of military resumes, is not only military jargon like we looked at in the skills translator, but abbreviations and acronyms. You get so used to using those that they become like common language for you, and you forget that civilians don't know what it is. They don't know what an HVT is, or any type of given abbreviation that you can think of for the military. You want to always spell those out, unless it's so common in the industry that anybody knows what it means. But again, that's a subjective approach. So in general, spell out your abbreviations. Don't make errors in grammar and format, which we talked about. Don't use pronouns like I, me, we, things like that. It encourages narrative language in the resume, for one, which is never a good thing. We don't want to speak in narratives. We want concise bullet points. And two, it just doesn't sound professional, and it's not the format that a resume should be used in. So we're not going to use those types of words. Don't use photographs, which we talked about. Don't use false data. At the end of the day, what's in this resume comes back on you. We are not, as VTSs, going to look into confirming what you're telling us. We're going to take your word for it. But if you're called on it in a background investigation or in an interview, and it's determined that you've stretched the truth or that you're not trustworthy, it's going to cost you a job at the least, if not hurt you for other positions, depending on if interviewers talk to each other, etc. So we're definitely not going to falsify data. The risk hugely outweighs any type of benefit of making something up in your resume. And then don't be subjective or use adjectives. So things like excessive words like quickly led an operation, effectively led an operation, flawlessly maintained something. Those types of things, they just enhance a longer description than what it needs. We want to be concise and make an impact, and you do that by using numbers and hard data to sell yourself in the resume. So don't be subjective and use adjectives. Okay, that being said, I know that was a long training. And that's about all I've got. Laura, did I miss anything, or do you have any points?
No, it's perfect. Just a reminder that you all can log on, if you're a service member or spouse, to our website, Hire Heroes USA. And every Friday we have registration, and someone will contact you whenever the registration is confirmed, and we can help you with this resume. So you can just use this video to just assist you whenever, what Matt was saying, with tailoring your resume to specific job descriptions.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Matt.
For tuning in, and that's all we've got.